my pleasure to welcome Maine Senator Angus King to the 2020 National Association of State Energy Officials Annual Policy Outlook Conference. Senator King was sworn in as Maine's first independent senator in 2013, where he now sits on 4 oversight committees: Rules, Intelligence, Armed Service, and Energy and Natural Resources. In 1994, he was elected Maine's 71st governor and served 2 terms. And prior to being elected governor, he worked in the private sector for an alternative energy development company in New England, and also founded a company that developed large-scale energy conservation initiatives at commercial and industrial facilities in Maine. Senator King joins a long line of independent leaders from the state of Maine and is a steadfast believer in the need for greater bipartisan dialogue and relationship building among legislators, which I think many of us here at the bipartisan NASIO organization can also share and relate to. So Senator King, thank you so much for joining us. What is surely a busy time. We appreciate you being here with us.
Dan, it's great to be with you, and very timely to be talking about energy right now. So let's get at it.
That sounds great. Happy to have you provide opening remarks, so I can just jump right into the questions.
Well, I think the only opening remark I would make is that it didn't get really noticed very much, but right at the end of the year, as part of the omnibus budget bill in December, we passed the most significant piece of energy legislation in something like 15 years. It was almost entirely bipartisan, came out of the Energy and Natural Resources Committee. It had been worked on for years, and you know, the way legislation works, there is I guess what the old saying is, there is a tide in the lives of men which taken at the flood leads on to victory. And this one, we just happened to catch the timing right. The bill went through, the president signed it. So we've got some good energy initiatives that are ready to be put into effect right now.
That's great. That's exciting. I can tell you that the group of state energy officials did notice and are very grateful for your work and others. Along those lines, during Governor Granholm's confirmation hearing, you noted that storage is a top priority. And with the passage of that, how do you see energy storage fitting in? What do you think states and the DOE should be doing to more rapidly advance and deploy the use of energy storage?
Well, there's a major section in the bill that was built upon a bill called the BEST Act, which had all kinds of storage provisions, and it had one that I sponsored involving a joint project between the military and the Department of Energy. The military has a serious storage problem. Jim Mattis once said, "Who will cut off this tether to oil that I have?" Because they have to carry fuel with them all over the place, all over the world. So energy storage is important to them. Anyway, the reason I said that in Governor Granholm's hearing is that renewables are there. They're ready. They're economic. Wind and solar are now, I think, the lowest cost form of electrical energy production. But of course, the issue is intermittency. And so you have to have a backup. And by and large, in most parts of the country, certainly in New England, the backup is natural gas, a fossil fuel. But once we can solve the intermittency problem with cost-effective storage, then we can go entirely renewable. I mean, and then of course you build on that to electrification of vehicles, and you build on that to electrification like heat pumps, and you've done 3/4, if not more, of the energy use in the country can be based upon renewables. So storage is the key that unlocks it. I say that storage is the real Green New Deal. It's the thing that will unlock a fully renewable energy future.
That's great. Thank you. So speaking of heat pumps, here in Maine, we're in the single digits this morning and this weekend. You've put forward legislation to allow consumers to receive a refundable federal tax credit for costs associated with the installation of high-efficiency heat pumps. Many states and NASIO are moving forward with electrification of both the heating and transportation sectors. Do you see opportunities to advance support for these in federal action or in legislation?
Well, I hope so. I think, I mean, again, there's ample precedent in federal legislation for supporting energy efficiency kinds of programs, whether it's, supporting, I shouldn't have said energy efficiency, but energy programs for wind, solar, and those kinds of things. So we're talking about the same kind of support here. Heat pumps are 300% more efficient than resistance baseboard electric heating. They're a very efficient way to use electricity and use the ambient heat in the air in order to heat indoor space. So I just hope that we can give it that kind of support, that it will help, because the barrier is the initial capital cost to the consumer. Significant savings over time on their energy bills, but you got to spring for anywhere from $3,000 to $10,000, and so a tax credit in that situation would be a big incentive, I think.
Agreed. Since you've been in the Senate, each year you've signed on to the Collins-Reed Dear Colleague letter supporting funding for the U.S. State Energy Program and the Weatherization Assistance Program, which we in Maine and other states tuning in greatly appreciate. SEP offers, as you know, states the flexible federal funding to target a range of efficiency and renewable technology deployment and to help create jobs and advance in technologies such as energy storage. As you think about federal clean energy, climate, or infrastructure legislation, do you feel like there would be an opportunity to continue to support funding for those two programs? And do you have other thoughts around other priorities within that?
Well, we just increased or extended the authorization for the WAP program till 2025, so that's a good step. That's done. And I do think there's opportunity for support. There is a lot of interest and excitement around here about a major infrastructure program. We've been talking about it for years. We now think it's entirely possible. And as far as I'm concerned, there are two priorities. One is energy efficiency, energy modernization, and broadband. Those are the two things that, for me, have to be in an energy package in order for it to really meet the needs of the American people. So I think the answer is yes. I can't make promises about ongoing appropriations or what that's going to look like, but I think people are realizing that these kinds of programs, particularly those that may have an initial capital cost but lower costs in the long run, really are good investments. Good investments from an energy point of view, from a climate point of view, and from the point of view of the consumers.
Thank you. You've been a stalwart supporter of offshore wind here in Maine, particularly supporting the University of Maine, and we see it as, I think here in Maine, obviously we see it as a really significant opportunity, and there were tax credits put forward in the last energy legislation. Can you talk a little bit about how you see offshore wind fitting into the energy picture?
Well, offshore wind has enormous potential, and Maine has a sort of special niche in this development. Offshore wind now, when people say offshore wind, they're really talking about onshore wind with water up to its knees. I mean, these are talking about, we're talking about traditional pylons for wind turbines that just go into the bottom of the ocean in the water 50 or 60 feet up the tube. But it's the same technology. The problem with that technology is it's unfeasible once the water gets to be about 100 feet deep, maybe a little deeper. And so the next real frontier is floating, a floating platform, and that's where the University of Maine comes in. They've developed a technology, they call it aquaventus, that floats the platform for very large turbines, and then you can put them pretty far offshore, and you avoid a lot of the conflicts with fishermen, with visual, with sound, many of the objections and problems really are much less as you get further offshore. They're also talking about developing DC turbines so that the power comes over in direct current rather than AC. You don't have to worry about EMF on the ocean floor. There are less line losses. So the development at the University of Maine of the floating technology, I think, is really a major breakthrough. And it's been tested in a 1/8 scale off of Castine, Maine. But now they're talking about a much larger test with several turbines offshore in Maine. But that's where the power is. The other piece of the other reason offshore wind is so important, remember we talked about intermittency. The capacity factor of a wind project offshore is much higher. A land-based wind project has maybe a 35% capacity factor. That means it's producing its full power 35% of the time because of the variations in wind. Offshore, it's over 50%, which in the energy business is enormous. Um, so you get much more electricity for the installed capital cost. Now, right now, the cost is high, but as we develop the infrastructure, the special ships and the construction of these components onshore in Maine, I hope, uh, or other coastal states, that's going to help to invigorate the coastal economy. And we could supply pretty much the entire energy demand of our at least the coastal areas and many of the inland areas from offshore wind with zero emissions. So it's a very exciting frontier, and it's not really a frontier now; it's being developed. The frontier is the floating technology, but it's a huge opportunity for us on all levels, and I'm really excited about the progress. In fact, I invited Governor Granholm during her confirmation hearing to come up to the University of Maine and see the work that they're doing up there on this floating technology. And she said she'd come, so let's hope we can make that happen.
That would be great. Actually, our last question is we have our annual meeting this October. Vaccinations pending is poised to be in Portland, Maine. We're going to be having energy officials from across the country come to Maine, visit places in Maine, including the University of Maine Offshore Wind Research Center. And so depending on your schedule, maybe we can time the Governor Granholm's visit around the same time to come visit Maine in the fall.
Well, that would be great, and I'd love to be there to welcome your cohorts from around the country, because the work you're doing is it's so important, it's timely, it's exciting, it's interesting. As you mentioned, my background is in energy. I've worked in the development of hydro, biomass, wind, conservation, energy efficiency. So this is where I've sort of lived for 35 years. So I would love to be able to welcome the group to Maine. And I can tell you, you better get ready, because traditionally conventions that occur in Maine have the highest attendance of pretty much anywhere in the country. Everybody wants to come. October is a great time to come to Maine. The leaves are changing. You can be sure you get them out on Casco Bay for an outing, and we can have a good time in Maine. And I hope I do have a chance to join you. And Dan, I want to thank you personally for the work you're doing for Governor Mills and the really outstanding work in Maine. There's so much interesting, important, and really groundbreaking work going on in Maine, and I think it's a great place to test and work on a lot of these projects. I've driven around lately. I've never seen so much solar. It seems like solar is almost growing out of the ground. Everywhere I go, there's a new large solar array, which is very exciting and just great for the future of Maine and New England and the country.
Well, thank you, Senator, and thank you so much for joining the NASU annual meeting. We really appreciate it, and all the work that you're doing in Washington, D.C., and appreciate you joining us, and hope to see you in the fall in person.
Great to see you. Thanks again, Dan.
Thank you.